As it typically does, Daytona delivered a stunner of a finish. With both classes coming down to a run to the line on the last lap, the audience was treated to quite the spectacle. Today, though, there's no high banks to keep things close. It will all come down to skill and cunning here at the ring as we get ready to watch Round 5 of the PRL LeMans Series. You'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. The Nürburgring's GP course hosts today's event and might not be as familiar as its big brother, the Nordschleife. Let's head to our track guide to learn more about it. Welcome to the Nürburgring. Often overshadowed by its older, bigger brother, the Nordschleife, the Grand-Prix course has actually accrued quite a bit of history itself. This modern circuit was built in the early 80s as a replacement for the lesser-known Southern Loop. And while it was updated and extended in 2002, it stayed roughly 3 miles in length throughout its history. However, the addition of the Mercedes Arena brought about a total of 6 different layouts to choose from, with the longest including 16 turns. Though not as fearsome as the ring, it's technically challenging and carries its own fair share of elevation change. Plus, the types of corners come in a wide variety, ranging from the heavy braking into the sharp hairpin of the first turn, to the swift Schumacher S, which is still not quite flat out in a lot of modern cars. Passing can sometimes come at a premium, and drivers are often forced to get creative if they find themselves stuck behind a competitor. But the difficulty that elicits mistakes means that patience can pay off for those who stay diligent. While Formula One raced here on and off for a few decades, it now mainly hosts GT and touring car racing, along with some lower-tier open-wheel series. In the end, race fans certainly shouldn't overlook the importance of this German circuit. While it may not carry the fame of its counterpart, it holds up well and helps keep this worldwide phenomenon relevant to modern racing. Well, we've seen the GTE cars race here in the PRL series before, but DJ, adding the LMP2 cars in the mix, what's that going to do to the dynamic?
Well, Joe, it's going to make a very, very tricky technical track all the more tricky for both the GTEs and the LMP2s. As you saw in that video, there are some good opportunities for overtaking here down into that forced corner. The Haug Hook, very, very good spot to overtake, and the Mercedes-Benz Arena section really presents a great opportunity to fight back. You see time and time again as they dive down that hill and rise back up and go through there. You can really fight back if you're overtaken. Also good overtaking down into Dunlop, but with as much speed as these LMP2s carry, and I think most critically with the fact that we are running the fast chicane off of the backstretch here today, it means that they are going to close down on these GTEs very, very quickly. It's going to be very, very tricky, and we're going to see a lot of stack-ups, I think, depending on where they catch these cars. If the LMP2s catch a GTE and the Schumacher S, or maybe coming through Valvoline and Ford, could be a very dicey situation, and everybody's going to have to be on the absolute top of their game.
That's for sure. And, well, today's race, we want to remind you, is brought to you by SimMSA. Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring everyone together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SIMMSA.net.
The PRL LeMans Series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulations. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance.
Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. Now, as we look at the championship, starting off with the Drivers' Championships, the LMP2 cars, well, Christopher Urbano is 3 out of 4, and he has a 12-point gap over Felipe Ruiz currently. Christian Eisler, again, he's been sort of consistent, but he's going to have to keep up that consistency along with trying to start beating Christoph at some point during this season. Byron Daly, just 2 points behind him, is then followed by a tie. Carl Modoff and Nicholas Johnston back there in the 5th spot. As we look at the GTE standings as well, up at the top of them, Uthman Alawi, with finally getting a win on the board, is 4 points ahead of Stephen Ash and only 9 back to Michael Ross. So very, very tight amongst our top 3. Francisco Montini, a little ways back, is followed 1 point back by Tyler DeZube. So 4th and 5th narrowly split by the smallest of margins. What about the teams championship? What are we looking at there, DJ?
Well, at the top of the charts right now is Delta Sport U4K. That is Urbano and Modoff. They are leading off, but just barely Punto Cielo Racing, which is Felipe Ruiz and Christian Eisler. So that battle is very, very tight and intense and expected to continue today here at the ring. NinjaTrader LMP2 is a fair ways back, 68 points off of the lead, with Final Lap Team Yellow and Torque Freak Racing rounding out your top 5. And as we go over to the GTE Championship, Team Championship as well, you can see there RSR by G Performance having just a 5-point lead over Frozen Speed Full Send Racing there. That's going to be very, very tight as well. Uthman Alawi, who you saw currently at the top of those GTE standings in the Drivers' Championship, really leading his team to victory there, so good for him. Vector by RSR, only 26 points back. They have a chance there to be able to catch back up with a couple of good races. Lockup Racing and SRT Esport Green, though, they are tied for 4th place, 42 points back, but just 6 points back of those two is SimRacing Premium.
And for today's race, here is our details. We are at round 5 out of 10. There you can see the 2 different classes that will be competing simultaneously. It's a 60-minute event, and it is open setup. So the drivers can do anything to these cars that you could do in real life to try and tweak and get them to behave how they want. They do have some penalties that they will accrue if they get too many incident points. There you see them listed, along with the bonus points for behaving well. It's one of those that they are trying to compete with right now. That is the pole position, with which Felipe Ruiz currently has that bonus point. That could go to somebody else, as a few drivers are still circulating around here in qualifying. And then Michael Ross on the provisional pole in the GTE class. We're watching Ruiz take his final flyer here as he heads through the final chicane and up around Coca-Cola. Let's see if this is quicker than a 40.345. Oh, doesn't look like it with that, and in fact, he abandons it.
Yeah, very, very tough break there for Felipe coming around that final bend. And it's good to note, Joe, we talked about it a little bit in a couple of the previous races, but just how much these LMP2s really do not like riding over the curbs, as we see Ovando calling off his lap. So these LMP2 drivers are going to have to be very, very careful not to take too much of a bite out of the curbs coming around NGK or any other places. Nicholas Johnson now flying to the line in that hot pink machine. He is able to go faster, bump his way up the order with a 41.6. That'll put him in 7th.
Carl Modoff just sets his fastest time and jumps up to the front row as we watch Cal Quinn complete his final lap, only able to do 5th. Cal Quinn looking for a little bit of a better day today. Unfortunately, DNF'd last week after he was punted off in the first lap by Urbano, our eventual winner. Now, Urbano did get a 10-point penalty because of that. As we're watching Simon Avital now, looks like he might be one of our last ones. And yes, indeed, time runs out. He didn't even get to complete which means our grid is set. Let's go through that starting order. Felipe Ruiz starts on the pole with Karl Modov starting next to him in second and Christian Eisler in third. Then it's Christoph Herbeno in the fourth place with Horatio Calquin on the inside of row 3. Owen Watts starts sixth and Nicholas Johnston starts seventh with TNC Layton in the eighth position. Byron Daly in ninth. Running out the top 10 is Raymond Day. I see Ricardo De Matteo and Jared Turnbull have not turned a lap, and I'm going to have to check to see if either of them are here, and indeed no. So only 10 starters in the LMP2s.
In those GTEs, your points leader is starting off on pole, Utman Alawi, followed by Michael Ross. That's third place in championship, so that battle getting very, very close. Boris Ovando in third in class. He's going to be looking to redeem himself. He had two very, very tough races early on. He's going to be looking to have some better luck here. Was able to have a cleaner race at Daytona, but outside of him will be Stephen Ash. Behind them, in row 8, Rafael Russo and Tyler DeZube, followed by Sean Romig and Mac Miller. Ted Lowendick will be lining up in the 9th in class position, followed by Jerome Bethune. Behind him, Francisco Montini, bit of an uncharacteristically low qualifying. We've seen him up in the top 5s earlier this year. He is going to be flanked by David Flanagan, Simon Avital, and Nicholas Delp, making up row 12 behind him, followed by Brett Barrett and Kenny Rodriguez. Justin Ream did not set a time.
All right, so the drivers are now lining up, waiting for the partial pace lap to take them around. Then they'll be released, and Ruiz will have control of the field. It is a very cloudy day today, as you can tell, and here in the Eifel Mountains, well, that's making it quite cool on the track. It's 66 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface. I expect that these first few laps will be maybe a bit treacherous if drivers aren't paying attention to the lack of grip.
To say the least, Joe, these guys are going to have to be very, very careful. 66 degrees means you are not going to get these tires up to temperature for at least probably a full lap. So they're going to have to be very cautious on the brakes going into turn 1. Make sure that they don't go slipping and sliding too much, and just be as careful as can be all the way around.
All they got to do is head through the final chicane, and then the pace car will peel into the pits. There he goes. Felipe Ruiz will have control. Let's see if he waits or if he goes off immediately. Coming around Coca-Cola. He's pacing them, making them wait, and now he goes. Green flag is out here for round 5 of the PRL LeMans series. Great start for Ruiz, but look at the battle behind them. Modov, Eisler, and Herbeno fan out almost 3 wide down into the Haug hook. Everybody slamming on the brakes as they come around the very sharp first corner. Looks like it's all safe. Let's go to the GTEs.
Well, Utman Alawi got a really, really great start and was able to really get the field out bunched up, as we see everybody coming on through the corner. So Alawi leads in the exact order that they started, and Ross right behind.
As that was happening, a little bit of side-by-side banging between Eisler and Herbeno. They're both able to continue. Eisler almost lost multiple positions with that. So Ruiz, Modov, Herbeno, Johnston, and Eisler are your current order in the LMP2s. They come down towards the Dunlop hairpin. Long banked corner, and right now the closest fight amongst that group looks to be between Johnston, Eisler, and Calquin for 4th.
Yeah, Nicholas Johnson just not really able to escape from Christian Eisler. Eisler down 2 positions from the start, Johnson up 2, but behind them, Calquin really starting to put the screws onto Eisler now as they work their way through that chicane area there. Very, very quick racing. You don't want to go too hard, as we see. I think that was Herbeno running a little bit wide out of the chicane.
And now Owen Watts might have a chance to get by Calquin. He's poking his nose out, but Calquin defends, coming into the NGK chicane just a little too fast for these LMP2s. So they all stay in order. Eisler 5th, Calquin 6th, and Watts in 7th.
Everybody getting nice and easy here, but this is the area you've got to keep your eyes open. If you get a good jump out of Coca-Cola, you can really get the good slipstream down the front straight. But we've got a problem in the back, Joe.
Ted Lowendick in the 72. Oh, we got some help. He unfortunately got shoved off the road by Jerome Bertum. And think maybe, not sure if he had a slowdown penalty or if he just was slow out of the corner. Oh, yeah, he was slow out of the corner.
Yeah, very slow out of the corner. Jerome a little bit boxed in there, and I think just didn't expect him to be that slow coming off the corner. We did just hear both of them say on the radio, Jerome offering apologies, and Lowendick saying, hey, it's okay, it happens, it's racing.
As we come back live, you can see that Lowendick came out the worst of it. He's well behind the field at this point. Right now, Alawi still leads at the front of that GTE pack. It's a second and a half ahead of Ross. We look at Nick Johnston in the meantime in the purple and black number 28 LMP2. Christian Eisler is chasing him. Remember, Eisler started this race in third, so he did lose 2 spots from the very start. Could have been a lot worse, of course, with him getting pushed around the way he was. We ride on board with Johnston. Up ahead of him is third place Herbino. His win last week is looking like it's going to be difficult to repeat because he is certainly not close to challenging our leaders. Meanwhile, we can't see it, but behind us right now, Christian Eisler is putting immense pressure on Nick.
Oh, good run for Eisler. Narrow line off of Coca-Cola there. That's going to give him a little bit of a blast. He is right up behind Johnson. He'll be able to get a good draft here. Ducks out to the inside. Tricky braking zone. You're going downhill. It's so easy to lock up that right front tire, but Eisler keeps it nice and cool. He takes the narrow line, a little bit of contact at the apex, and that's going to slow Eisler up and let that's Cal Quinn by, and Watts challenging now.
Hey, talked about the difficulty getting it into that corner. Eisler is the one that found it and almost lost the car. He tries to launch off of the Mercedes arena to see if he can catch back up to Cal Quinn. As Owen Watts watches on, we ride on his helmet cam. Oh, whoa, Watts strong into Valvoline, nearly hitting the back of Eisler.
Watts feels like his brakes are very good today, so that'll be something to keep an eye out if he's able to send that car deep into one of the heavy braking zones. Valvoline, not really one of the areas you'd think to do it. You can see there Nicholas Johnson ahead, cutting off the nose of Cal Quinn. Good defensive move there, just wide line into the corner, denying Cal Quinn any opportunity to pick good power off of Dunlop.
So far, most of our best racing has been here in the LMP2 class. The GTEs have been relatively single file. But we're going to take a look at Ovando now, as this is for third place, second place really. Ross just ahead of him, half a second separating the 67 and the 22.
And last week it looked like Michael Ross was in a whole bunch of trouble. That GTE, that Ford GT, just not really having the speed. Oh, we've had a big crash up front. That's Johnson and Cal Quinn.
Oh, for the second week in a row, Cal Quinn is off on the side of the road. This happened out of Coca-Cola. Tried to make a move. It was the reverse of last time. Instead of someone dive bombing him, he just absolutely sends it in here. And Nick Johnston, who got squeezed around the outside, you're going to see it right here. Has he left enough space? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I'm going to put a little bit of the blame there on Horatio Cal Quinn. He had a really good opportunistic move down the inside of Johnson. Kudos to him on that, but just squeezed him too hard. If he had backed off a little bit, moved him off, realized how far he pushed him, I would have said okay, but he just stuck Johnson there, and Johnson had nowhere to go.
Johnston is able to continue, but he's down to 6th, so he lost a couple spots through that exchange. Going up ahead of him to Eisler. He's now promoted up to 4th. He's got one of those spots back, but that is Owen Watts in the white LMP2 just behind him.
Owen Watts stalking the Iceman here, and Nicholas Johnson right behind him. So Johnson clearly a little bit angry about that. He's got the red mist, I'd imagine, is going to be trying to hassle Owen Watts here again. Remember, this was a great battle that we saw last week at Daytona between these two guys, and looks like it's just going to continue again here today. They space out a little bit through the kink. Here they go flying through that super fast hairpin. There you see, you've got to be very careful not to get too much of the curves, as we said in the LMP2s. Work their way around Coca-Cola. Watts up ahead, catches a little bit too much of that curve, sends his tail just a little skittish, but he's able to collect it and keep going.
Doesn't help him gain on Eisler, but it also doesn't seem to have given anything to Johnston to try and come back at him. We also don't know although Johnston is deep on the brakes, we don't know if Johnston has much damage on the car after that contact.
No, we don't, Joe. It doesn't look visibly like there's a whole lot. I've been trying to keep an eye on it, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have some sort of suspension damage or something that's affecting the car. But I have to say, he's keeping relatively good pace with everybody around him. His last lap was a 43.1. Watson Eisler running a 42.6, so he was slow, but that does take into consideration the actual accident itself.
Things staying awful tight here amongst the middle of the pack in the LMP2s. Horatio Calquin did have to take a tow. He's since been sitting in his stall and getting repairs. I'm not sure how soon he'll actually be able to return, if he can return to this race, because that was a pretty hard blow. But the 28 of Nick Johnston just staying right in the tire tracks of Owen Watts, excuse me. And we're only 10 minutes into this race, so still plenty of time left to go. This could play out in a number of fashions. Christian Eisler, we watch over his shoulder, looking back at the pair.
Yeah, Eisler very, very happy that Johnson is putting the pressure to Watts. It just allows him to get a little bit of a gap. He's been able to work that up to about 1.2 seconds, so he's got a little bit of breathing room and can maybe start to focus in on Christoph Herbeno up ahead, because while he was involved in that scrap behind, Herbeno was able to get that gap all the way up to 3.8 seconds.
Let's check out the GTE leaders as well, because Ross and Ovando have not separated. In fact, they've gotten a lot closer. It's down 0.3 seconds. We are on board with the Porsche of Ovando. Michael Ross in the Ford just ahead of him. Not sure that this is enough for him to attack up into the NGK chicane, but at least it'll keep him tight to him.
Indeed it will, and now we got to see who can get the better blast out of the chicane and through Coca-Cola. Right now it looks like it is advantage Ovando. Very, very good run there, but that GT trying to get all the power down that it can. Looks like they were about evenly matched coming out of Coca-Cola, but the draft starting to come into play for Ovando. Let's see how brave he wants to be on the brakes, decides this is not the lap to do it, and just stays single file.
Through the Haug hook. He's still got him in his sights. This could absolutely go the way of Boris very quickly. We saw last night, we covered a race here for the Porsche Owners Club, and little mistakes would open the door and allow drivers to try and capitalize coming out of the Mercedes arena. Still nothing, but Boris is not relinquishing any time at all. It stayed firmly at 0.3 seconds between them.
No, he just wants to keep up the pressure here as much as possible. Joe, you talked about it, those little mistakes. It's all about the mental game for these drivers, as Felipe Ruiz at the top of the order sets the fastest lap. It's all about keeping that pressure up. If you can do that lap after lap, whether consciously or subconsciously, the driver in front will start driving in their mirrors, checking to see where you're going to be, getting fearful about a move that you will throw. And if he is not devoting his entire attention to the road ahead of him, he will make even an infinitesimal mistake, and that should be enough for some of these really great drivers to get on by.
My goodness, Ovando is almost on top of him. Loses about 1/10 though coming out of Bilstein. So it was up to 0.4 seconds, but the slipstream allows him to reel it right back in, back down to 3 and even 2 briefly before they hit the binders for the NGK chicane. So what can Ovando do? Now, he finally finished a race for the first time since round 1. Did not DNF, but still was way down the order at Daytona. If he can snag this podium, it will be a much-needed return to form for the 22.
It will, Joe, and despite, as you said, winning that first round, Ovando all the way down in 15th in the championship as a courtesy of those 2 DNFs. So if he wants to have any sort of a hope of being able to mount a good challenge here, he's got to get a move on, and this looks like it could be a race where he could do that, clearly having the pace to run in that podium positions.
He's so far behind on points, though, it's going to take a lot for him to really get back into things. They only have 1 drop week, so he already has a 0 to his name at this point with those 2 DNFs. So we ride on board, watching him flick through the gears. Ruiz with another fastest lap up at the top of our screen. Ruiz clearly has got the bit between his teeth because it's 2.8 seconds back to Modoff. We're going to stay right here because this is definitely the more exciting one, watching the Porsche chase the Ford. But Modoff 3 seconds back, and Felipe just continuing to slowly but steadily increase that gap.
Well, we heard them say last week that this was not going to be nearly as much of a draft-sensitive circuit and that you were going to be able to get a little bit more spaced out. That's exactly what is happening. But as we see here, Ovando not really able to fully take advantage of that draft. He keeps getting very, very close to him, but not quite the long straights like on Daytona to completely try to breeze on by Ross here. But that all said, I think Boris is also pretty content to just sit back here. He may be able to save just a couple of tenths of a gallon of fuel. Ooh, that's not going to help him. Boris running very wide out of Coca-Cola.
Caught the dirt, but thankfully did not spin the car. Didn't seem to lose him too much time either. He clattered over a few bumps. I'm hoping he didn't get damage out of that, because we'd hate to see this fight suddenly go away. He sticks with it through the Mercedes arena. Now, when are we going to get lap traffic? That's another question. And I think the answer is just about now, because Felipe Ruiz is on the back of Ted Lowendick, and he's going to be the first among the group to find those prototypes screaming on by.
And this is where the impetus comes to both drivers when you get into traffic like this. If you are the slower LMP, or the slower GTE driver rather, what you want to do is do not change your racing line. You just want to drive like absolutely nothing is happening and have the LMP2 go around you. That's the safest way to do it. And for the LMP2, you've got to pick where you want to make that move. You don't want to send a crazy flyer up the inside of the NKG chicane the NGK chicane, for example. That'll throw everybody off, and it's a one-way ticket. It's a disaster. You want to try to get the pass done on the straights, not get held up behind. There you see that's a little bit of hold up there for these guys as they work their way on through, coming through Ford, but they're able to dispatch relatively well. That's Modoff and Herbino working their way on by. Herbino, a little bit of a compromised exit. Door entrance coming into Dunlop, but he's able to get things done nice and easy.
The two teammates together once again, but last time they were challenging Ruiz for the victory. Ruiz coming home 3/1000ths behind at the line, behind Herbino, but he seems to have the measure of them now. Once again, a little traffic here. Kenny Rodriguez stays out of the way, and both LMP2s able to get by. This time, though, Christoph with a nice run. How much are the teammates willing to work together, and how much are they willing to fight? Looks like Christoph not all that interested this early in the race. I think they're trying to keep from holding each other up. Oh, and that'll hold them up. A mistake from Herbino out of the chicane.
Yeah, running a little bit wide there, Joe. And Herbino certainly had the run to do it, but unfortunately he just didn't have the braking zone. That run into the chicane and the fast chicane, very, very quick. Only one line through there, really. And that mistake cost him a chance of being able to make the pass down here into the Haug Hook. But he's going to have some more opportunity ahead, as there are some more GTs ahead of him. I believe that's Berthume and Rem up the road.
It is indeed, and they're all in a battle. Jerome, Justin, and David Flanagan as well. Very tight together. And in fact, look at that, a little duck to the inside. Ray not heeding your advice. He thought that maybe he could effect a pass into Valvoline. Behind them, now very much checked up, is Herbino and Modoff. They're going to be able to get by one of them, and I think only one. They're running out of straight before they get into Dunlop, but sending it in deep. Carl Modoff is not willing to sit around.
Modoff not willing to sit around, but that almost compromised him a little bit as he coming up into the back of David Flanagan there. But they're able to get around. Herbino able to get the better, more consistent run out of Dunlop. They work their way through the Michael Schumacher S relatively easily. Now through this second set of chicanes, they're running up behind yet another slower GTE. That's Nicholas Delp. They're coming up behind. Herbino boxed in there, but still gets a good run, taking advantage of the draft. Didn't want to make the pass through the kink and down into the chicane last time. Does he do it this time?
Once again, the answer is no. Christoph just content to ride. This time he doesn't make the mistake coming out of the NGK chicane. So I'm thinking that these two are just kind of playing it cool for the time being. Remember, Christoph can do what you mentioned earlier of saving little bits of fuel along the way, make a quicker stop later down the line.
Exactly. If he's just save a tenth here and a tenth there as well, pretty much that'll add up to a gallon. And if you can get a full gallon out of it, you will be able to be a little bit more accurate and save time in the pits. So good shows for them both. I don't think anybody really wants to be too aggressive. Still 42 minutes to go. We remember how crazy the action was at Daytona all the way throughout. It feels like these drivers don't really want a repeat of that, and they want a much more calm race here today.
And they get split, at least momentarily, by Avital, who unfortunately is in the way of Christoph Urbano. Eventually gets by, but he loses about a second up to Karl Modoff from that. They're going to have more battling cars in front of them because Mac Miller and Francisco Montini are very tight for that 8th place in the GTEs, and they're next up.
These two Porsches, that's Montini in front with that Italian tricolor livery. Mac Miller trying to chase him down at this point. Quick flick there through these fast chicanes. I love this portion of the track so much. It's so difficult to get right. And if you get it right, though, it's such a great feeling now. But here come Urbano and Eisler as they come, or Modoff and Eisler, rather, excuse me, as they come up now. That is Modoff able to get up and through past one, but Urbano looked like he's very much caught out there. He's going to have a compromised line in and out of Coca-Cola.
And that is going to split up the fight. Francisco gets himself a nice buffer back to Mac Miller out of that one. I think that might actually be the Mexican flag. Easy to confuse that with the Italian flag, because I know they are from the Hispano-American Club, but you never know, because you might be right since they've got Italian-sounding names. We'll have to check with them on that and see what they say. In the meantime, drivers really getting into the rhythm at this point, even with the traffic. The slightly smaller fields is paying a bit of dividends in that, and that some of the chaos that we saw at Daytona doesn't seem to be erupting.
No, this seems like a much more calm race today, which I think a lot of these drivers are going to be very happy to see. That said, we're only 20 minutes down, only a third of the way through this race, so there is still plenty of craziness to happen. But at least at the front of the field, Felipe Ruiz absolutely running away with it. That gap up to about 5.5 seconds.
And very similar situation for the 444. Alawi, now that he's got the one win under his belt, is trying to keep the momentum going. He's 3 seconds ahead of Michael Ross. Ross probably more concerned with what's behind him because, as you can see, as large as this gap is, it's not so big back there. That is Ovando still right on his tailpipe.
Yeah, Ovando has just kept up very good, consistent pressure here. I haven't seen him make any sort of move to actually get it.
Avital just went off. The 20 is unfortunately off track, and I think he hit the wall. He had some help from Byron Daly, it appears. We're going to look at the replay. This is a big hit.
Big hit. We're going to take a look at this from above and see the closing speed. This is a really good example of just how fast these LMP2s are. There you can see all of that downforce. I just don't think Daly realized that he was going to be having that much of a speed differential coming out of the corner like that. Caught him a little bit napping. So tough break for Avital. Who's that coming into the pits though, Joe? That's Flanagan.
Yeah, and he is within the pit window, but not typical that we'll see this. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not seeing any major damage on his Corvette. Huh. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on the 24 and see what he's got going on. Oh, and Rafael Russo is also off. Now, it looks like he avoided hitting the wall, but he's another one that got help, and this time it's Christoph Urbano. Urbano is already in hot water with the stewards after last round. Let's take a look at this one and see if he's going to find himself with another visit, unfortunately.
So Urbano, that LMP2 behind. Oh!
Yeah. I think he's going to find himself in the trailer after the race because that was a gap that was never going to be there.
No, I don't know what Christoph was thinking. I think he's just a little bit frustrated to be running back and third, so used to running so close up to the front, but not able to do it. But this is getting fascinating. That's that battle we've seen, and that's Ovando by.
Whoa, how did he make that so suddenly? Urbano is able to get through in the midst of it. I wonder if he played a part. Did he maybe distract the pair of them? Let's take a look at it, because you know what? I think it was Ross getting held up by Modoff through the chicane. Yeah, watch this. We'll see it coming up here into the NGK chicane. That is Modoff coming up around the outside of Ovando right now, then past the Ford of Ross.
Both drivers get on the binder, and there you're right, Ross's line was compromised. Ovando saw his chance. Ross getting out into the marbles a little bit on offline. That allows Ovando to power by, and then plus Urbano coming down the inside there as he is entitled to do. That further pushed Ross off the line and gave Ovando a clear-cut pass there. So that's exactly why you do what Boris has been doing for this race, just keeping up that constant pressure, because eventually something like that will happen, and if you are ready, you can pounce, as Boris Ovando just did.
Been a bit of a pressure cooker today out on track. Situations like that where, like you said, drivers just have to wait, and eventually it'll fall into their lap. Back to the racing line just behind Owen Watts. Ovando continues to try to keep Ross at bay so we can hold on to this second place. Not missing a whole lot in our LMP2s. Those have now been the ones that have split up. We look a little bit farther back here in the GTEs, though. This is Romig and Russo. Romig, who we are riding on board with, running in the Porsche. Russo in the Corvette, the 14. Close, but not close enough. Oh, but look at him on the brakes. Whoa!
He's got some closing speed there, Joe. He clearly has the tricky braking system of that Corvette nailed down quite well, does Rafael Russo. As you see him fighting off the line, they're out of Coca-Cola. Now coming up behind them is Cal Quinn, it looks like, so that may be a little bit of a fly in the ointment, but these two have a bit of a gap back to Montini and Miller as this four-car train is starting to develop. You can see there in that rear view mirror, that is Cal Quinn, the faster LMP2. Cal Quinn doing a very smart job here, not trying to push anything, being smart. It's very hard to do a pass as a faster class car through the Mercedes-Benz arena. I think he's just going to wait until they go down into Valvoline. Yep, that's exactly what he's going to do.
Be able to get to the inside, and as he puts himself between them, that's going to give advantage to Sean Romig, though, allowing a bit of a buffer. Now Romig will have to allow him through, but in a much easier spot. Looks like it didn't affect the battle all that much, as they're still going to stay about half a second apart from one another. And right behind them, that's also for position. That's Francisco Montini and Mac Miller, who once again nose to tail.
This is getting to be a good little two-way scrap here, riding on board with Mac Miller in that Porsche, chasing down Montini. Here you can see them working their way through that second chicane. This much tighter and elongated chicane. It's a kind of what you think of as a traditional way to set up the corner, run it wide on both sides. Montini able to get a better escape out of it, though, lining up to the kink. That's really going to hurt Miller, as this is a good area to try to get something to happen.
The NGK chicane, no change amongst the four. All of them essentially battling for sixth place. These two really catching up. In fact, seem to have quite a bit better pace than both Romig and Russo. Almost makes me wonder if, as we progress closer to the halfway point, if Montini or Miller may want to think about trying an early stop.
Well, Flanagan was one of the ones to come in early, so it may be something to watch for him. His last lap time was a 51.7, though, so one of the slower laps on the track. That extra fuel load hurting that Corvette ever so slightly, but we'll have to see what happens and keep an eye on him and how he's able to do throughout the course of the race.
Staying right with it. We're going to switch over to Christian Eisler. Urbano, I think Urbano might be a little bit damaged. He's fallen to 2 seconds behind Modoff. Now, that could be a little bit of the traffic as well, but he's now had contact multiple times today. Christoph is slowly slipping into the clutches of the 727.
He is indeed, and I would not be surprised if he's got a little bit of floor damage there on that car, the 92. Just falling back ever so slightly. Looks like he's having to fight the car out of the exits of the corner a little bit. We ride on board with him here. This will be a good way to tell. This is Christian Eisler's cam. We can see how Eisler's able to get that car down. Good run off the line there, though, for Urbano, so nothing crazy that I'm seeing.
Seems like he's holding his own, but it's definitely been a shrinking margin between the pair of them. Almost wonder if it is a little bit of straight line speed that Urbano is lacking. We'll probably be able to tell best once they get out of the Dunlop hairpin. They've got a nice long run to Michelin. So let's hold on here until we get out of Dunlop. See if he's going to start gaining. So right now, the gap between them, 0.7 of a second. They exit off of the hairpin. They're going to be flat out here until the left-hander of Michelin. 0.6 of a second. Small gains. Very small gains. Oh, and then the traffic's going to play a part here. That is David Flanagan. He's going to stay out of the way. Allows Urbano to get through, but it compromises both of our LMP2s.
It does, but that does allow for him to catch up ever so slightly, Eisler, to Urbano. He's now got that gap down to about 3.5 of a second. So here comes the exit off of Coca-Cola. You can see there Eisler taking a little bit of a different line, trying to maximize momentum rather than take necessarily the fastest A to B point through the corner. Not enough to get it, though. That gap back up to around 0.5 as they get to the end of the straight. So able to gain a little bit there, Joe, but nothing spectacular that makes me think there's damage or even some major setup tweaks between the two cars.
Fascinating stuff. And in about 40 seconds, we will hit that halfway mark in this 60-minute event. And Eisler's using every inch of the track. Remember, they don't have too much wiggle room on incident points. 13, and they will be given a drive-through penalty, which makes you wonder how many Urbano has accrued by this point. He's got to be careful because it's 4 incident points for every car-to-car contact that you have. So, you add that up to the off tracks that he has probably gotten by this point, and he could easily be in the danger zone.
Very, very much so. And the Nürburgring, one of the more difficult tracks to not pick up those off tracks. It's not quite Spa, which is often regarded as the absolute worst one in terms of off tracks, but this has some very, very tricky points. Lots of low curbing that it's very easy to run wide on. And if you get just a hair over that line, you will pick up a 1X. So Urbano probably having to drive a little bit more conservatively than he would like to. And that may be part of the reason why Eisler has been able to catch up to him. But that gap now hovering at around 0.8 of a second. So Eisler falling back there through NGK and Coca-Cola.
That's a good point. I hadn't even considered that that could affect his pace. Maybe that's what's making this such an odd one. Meanwhile, we're going to go over to Russo, who's got a nice little fight on his hands once again. This is Raphael being chasing Sean Romig for 6th spot. They've still got Francisco Montini behind them, but they're dropping Mac Miller. This is a great run out of Bilstein for Raphael Russo as we ride on his nose, and he's going to run out of straightaway.
He thought about taking a look down the inside there, but I don't think that was enough for him to do it. But, coming into the pits.
Somebody's listening to me for once. Finally, feels good. As they come in, looks like Raphael Russo going to try and leapfrog his rival. He will be slightly heavier on fuel. That's why we keep saying this isn't always ideal, but if he's having trouble getting by, this could be his best bet. The only other car to have made a scheduled stop in the entire field is David Flanagan, who currently runs last of the GTEs.
Be interesting to see where David comes out in comparison to Rafael here. Obviously not going up on the tires. Quick Race doesn't need to do anything on those sets of rubber, but he is back and on his way. Looks like Rafael was stationary in the box there for about 10 seconds. So relatively quick stop. And if you compare that back to David Flanagan's time, David had to take 24 seconds of fuel to go that full race distance. So definitely some ultimate strategies here in seeing just how much time you can save in the pits by staying out a little bit longer.
Back up to our leader in the LMP2 class, and well, we didn't have to go far because he's right behind our driver that just pitted. That's Rafael Russo that he's just putting a lap down now. 6.5 seconds back to Modov for the number 58, so he is well clear and continuing to eke out more and more of a buffer to the rest of the field. As for Uthman Alawi, it's not quite as big, but still increasing. Remember, the battle we saw between Ovando and Ross may have played a part in that, but Alawi up to 4.5 seconds over Boris.
Exactly, and with Boris, he has not fully been able to shake Michael Ross behind him. There you can see him actually coming through in the back of your screen as we ride on board now with Michael Ross. Ross has been able to keep relatively close to Boris, and while I wouldn't call this a fierce battle, Joe, it kind of goes into what I've talked about, that Boris is having to look out of his rearview mirror every now and again just to make sure that Michael isn't catching him. Maybe he has to drive a little bit more defensive, and that could be costing him a tenth or two up to his teammate Lucon.
As we continue to watch from the dash of Michael Ross, a lockup there from Ovando. He's making him feel the pressure, making sure that that 22 has to push. And hopefully that can get some cracks and whatnot out of him. Down to 26 minutes left on the clock, a little wide. Oh yeah, Ovando just suddenly looks to be very rattled.
Clearly, they're not the only one listening to you. Michael Ross listening to me today as well. As here he goes. He's got a great run. He thinks about making a move down there into Kumo. He's not going to do it there. That Porsche looks like it's a little bit better mid-corner than the Ford. The Ford's going to try to get the power down here, but we saw just how much top-line speed the Porsche had last week out at Daytona. Michael Ross pulling back just a little bit, not able to completely close, but here, this fast last sweeper. Let's see if he can close up any more. He's got a good run, Joe. He takes a different line into Coca-Cola. This could be it for Michael Ross.
Just doesn't seem like he's got enough of an exit. He is going to pull the slipstream here as we look through the rear spoiler of Boris Ovando. He takes a look anyways. He seems to feel confident about it. Not confident enough. Comes back to the racing line. 67 follows him through the Haug hook and sticks with it. I think something might come his way eventually.
Well, Joe, you talked about it earlier with Rafael Russo. I've got to think if I'm Michael Ross, I may want to be taking a look at that early pit stop. If I'm just feeling like I'm a little held up here by Boris Ovando, you don't really lose a whole heck of a lot by coming in. It's not like Daytona where if you lose the draft buddy, you're going to be out almost a second a lap. It may be worth him trying to take a move here.
Question is, how wide is the pit window today? And how early does he want to come in? Because he doesn't have to come in immediately necessarily. He could wait for just a 2-lap difference between himself and Ovando. They go through the Schumacher S. Once again, Boris way off the line, but he keeps his speed up well. Just clobbered that curb on the second apex.
He really did. It looks like the starting stages of Sector 2, just Boris's vein here today. Dunlop, we saw him have the problem on the last time, and then the Schumacher S having the problem this time. But once again, Michael Ross, try as he might in that Ford GT, just looks like he doesn't quite have the top line speed to close him down.
Well, at least for the time being, Boris Darling is the fearless leader of these two. And he's got to make up 5 seconds if he wants to be the leader of the entire field, which probably will require a big mistake from Ousmane Alaoui, who is set to make back-to-back wins, at least at this point. Coming up to the braking for the Haug Hook. Once again, just not quite there, but one little slip-up out of Coca-Cola is all it's going to take. If I was Boris, I feel like I'd really want to try and keep backing up that last hairpin just to make sure that I'm safe as we finally have another stopper. Francescini this time taking his Porsche down into his stall.
And we see here as we continue to ride on board with Michael Ross, just trying to keep that pressure up. And remember how these two changed positions in the first place, because Ross was in front of Ovando for the large chunk of it. Ross had a little come together with some LMP traffic coming through NGK and into Coca-Cola, and Boris was able to just absolutely get the perfect line there. And so that could be what Michael is hoping for at this point.
All right, Montini's back out, but he is behind Russo. So Russo managed to hold on to his spot. In fact, it looks like Montini lost quite a bit of time in that. It's up to 3 seconds between Rafael and Francisco.
Well, Joe, this may be another part of the storyline to keep an eye on here. Montini was stationary in the box about 0.8 to a second longer than Rafael Russo. So I think there may be a slight chance that Rafael underfueled the car in a bid to get out as fast as possible. Something to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, as Montini comes through the Dunlop hairpin, Boris Ovando now up to one of the biggest gaps we've seen between himself and Michael Ross, 1.3 seconds. Was there a mistake recently that we missed, I wonder? I'm checking, and it looks like, yeah, it looks like Michael Ross just went a little bit wide coming out of Bilstein, and that slowed him up just enough that now Ovando has the cushion he wants.
Exactly, and as we watch Montini here, apologies to both Francisco and his brother Federico. Never mind, we're going to keep on. It's a Ferrari club. It's Scuderia Ferrari club, so we are all good with that. Excuse me on that.
It is indeed. So yeah, I think your initial assessment might be right about an Italian flag, but they put it on a Porsche, and don't let the Porsche Owner Club people see this race. It's yeah. Let's go to Raymond Day, the first of our LMP2s to take a stop, but he was pretty far down the order, so not really much on the line for this one. This is probably him just trying to do something different and see if it nets him anything in this race.
Yeah, I mean, if you are that far down the order, it's exactly what you have to do. You just take an aggressive tire gamble or a fuel gamble. As we're going to jump back up here at this battle between Eisler and Herbino, heating back up again as Eisler's been able to close down to under a half a second.
Remember, he was gaining before, but he just seemed to have stalled out a little bit, and I wonder if it's because of the dirty air coming off of Christoph's car, because there you saw as he got very close, he just could not get the thing to steer in.
Yeah, and that is something to keep in mind, Joe. You know, these LMP2s, not exactly Formula 1 levels of downforce, but all of the little strakes that they have all over the car, the diffusers, the splitters, everything else. There's a lot of downforce as that's Mac Miller. Christian Eisler almost gets into the backup there coming through Coca-Cola. But no, there is a lot of downforce generated by these cars, and the air wash can be significant.
Our leader is in. Our leader is in, and so is Modov. Both of them pitting somewhat early. And they're being joined by Owen Watts. So we seem to be getting towards the end of the pit window for the LMP2 cars. But we're waiting on Herbino and Eisler to pit. Johnston is now in. Byron Daly is now in. Layton will stay out. Remember, we mentioned that Day has already stopped. Felipe Ruiz returns in third place.
Well, and Joe, could be what we talked about earlier with Christoph Herbeno. When he was behind his teammate of Modov, he may have been able to save a couple of tenths, and maybe that's why Eisler wasn't too aggressive in wanting to make a move on Herbeno as well, that he was just able to save a little bit of fuel in the draft of that number 92, and that's why both of these guys were able to stay out one lap longer.
18 minutes left on the clock. We watch as Urbano leads Eisler around. And they should, we expect, be in this lap based on what we're seeing from everybody else, unless they have saved massive amounts of fuel. Christoph coming through the NGK chicane, and yes, he is in. Eisler is also in.
All right, so that theory proving exactly true. Now everybody's stationary in the box for about, call it on average, about 17.3 seconds. So we'll have to see if these guys are able to beat that at all or where they come out. Doubt they'll be able to challenge Felipe Ruiz, but I think the battle may be to Karl Modov and see how close they'll be able to be to him.
Certainly, Modov was the one that was in the fight with them early on, but then started to pull away. Did he lose any time with his stop being a lap earlier than Eisler and Herbeno? Both of them still stationary, taking their service. Felipe Ruiz is by. And Herbeno is out first. Eisler out behind him. Where's Modov?
Modov just flashed by. I thought for a second he may have lost out there. He got a little held up by Tiensai Leighton on the later parts of that lap, but Karl Modov able to get out ahead of Herbeno and Eisler. That gap about 1.5 seconds between teammates of Modov and Herbeno.
So no change in the pit stops for our LMP2s. Everybody pretty much comes back out where they were before. That leaves us the GTE cars who still need to pit. The few that have come in, Rafael Russo was one of them, and it looks like I've called it at just the right time, because here comes Alawi.
Alawi coming down to his box, but Ovando and Michael Ross both staying out. So alternate pit strategy here. These GTEs known for having a little bit more in the tank than their LMP2 brethren, so we may see a little bit of a longer run here potentially from Alawi, their fuel window being a lot longer. But here comes Alawi coming to rest, Alawi coming to rest in the box, waiting. Fuel only, and 11.9 seconds for Alawi. A little bit slower than I would have thought.
Tyler Dzube also pitting. Looks to be the only other one coming in. All those behind him are staying out, except for Ted Lowendick. Remember, Ted was one of the drivers who unfortunately had a mistake on the first lap. Well, a mistake and some help that sent him to the back of the fields.
As we watch Ovando here now, your leader for the moment. That is Michael Ross still trying to chase him behind and chase him down. Stephen Ash, a whopping 10 seconds behind Michael Ross. So a big gap there between the podium positions. We see them work their way through pit curve here, ready to head down into the kink. Watching to see if these guys decide to come into the pits on this lap, as we are under 15 minutes to go here at the Nürburgring.
Boris Ovando now up into the NGK chicane. Does he follow suit? Yes, he does. Ovando is in. Ross is not. Ross stays out.
All right, some very different fuel strategy here going down. Michael Ross going out to try to see what he can do. And Joe, just a note, that last lap he just ran of a 1:49.157, that was Michael's fastest lap of the race. So if he wants to try to get by Boris in the pits, that's exactly how he's got to do it.
Stephen Ash, one of our winners this season of the GTE, is also in. Looks like Mac Miller follows him. Oh, and change for position. or almost changed her position between Herbino and Christian Eisler. Christian had a go at him into the NGK chicane. Looks like he's unfortunately not gotten the run that he wanted coming off of Coca-Cola, so I'm not sure he'll be able to attack here into the first corner. He thinks about it, and it's not quite there. Let's go back and look at a replay. They were actually wheel to wheel through this swift chicane, which is no easy feat.
No, not at all. You heard me talk about it, just how as he tries to make the move on the outside there of the kink. Little bit of a defensive move there from Herbino. They go side by side through NGK, and Eisler just having to back off there as you come through that second part of the chicane. It is so difficult to try to run anything but the actual racing line there. But Eisler not letting up on the attack. Now right up the tailpipe of Herbino. He wants that podium, Joe.
And he does look quicker. Whatever is happening with Christoph, he doesn't seem to have the pace that his early race seemed to show. Come up to the Schumacher S. It's almost looking like a matter of time here that Eisler just has to find the right spot to try and outbrake him and get through. He's going to go to the inside into the left-hander, but he can't get the traction off the corner. It has to carry on here into this swing back onto the back stretch, and here we go again. It looks almost exactly like it was before, except this time Christian Eisler goes through the inside of the kink. Can he outbrake him? He's fully ahead, and this time it almost looks like Herbino gave that one up. He saw the writing on the wall, and the Iceman is into the podium.
But remember, on that last lap, Eisler didn't have the best run out of Coca-Cola. Let's see if Herbino can get a better one. No, Eisler going defensive down to the inside, breaking off the draft. Good move. As there, Ovando has been able to come out ahead of Michael Ross. You can see it right there, just...
Oh, the other way around.
Oh, other way around. Excuse me, I got confused.
Yeah, Ross has jumped him. So Ovando falls to third place, and this was incredibly tight.
So there we see Ross getting his service, about ready to get underway. There he goes. Here comes the drag race to the line. Ovando coming strong. You're going to see Alawi flash by right there. That's Alawi, and here comes Ross. He's got more speed coming into the line, and he's just able to get that nose where he needs to do it and puts himself ahead of Ovando.
Wow. Incredible stuff from Michael Ross. Just called it perfectly, but now he's got to keep Boris behind him. And here they go with the lap traffic as Christoph Herbino and Christian Eisler are going to interrupt things. 10 minutes left to go after the pit stops. Rees still your leader in the LMP2s, and Alawi your leader in the GTEs. But honestly, the real action has been between the likes of Eisler and Herbino, and then between Ross and Ovando.
Indeed it has, and Joe, I do just want to note, I got confused there. Alawi is only 2 seconds up the road of Ross and Ovando, so that gap has really gone down, as there we see the battle with Eisler and Herbino splitting Alawi as they go down the front straight.
Now, I know you've been concerned about how much some of the drivers have put in. I think it was Russo that you felt short-fueled it, but look at the pit time from Michael Ross. He was in there for 8 seconds. I think that Michael may have short-fueled it to the extreme and might pay the piper when we get to that final lap.
He just might, and if you see just how close Boris Ovando is behind him, Michael may having to be keeping an eye on the fuel gauge rather than his speed dial right now. That may be part of what's going in here, so that's going to be something to keep in mind. 9 minutes, 20 seconds to go. Does he have the fuel to keep it out?
And we're riding on board with Ovando. What if we could hop on board with Ross and listen to see if he's lifting and coasting anywhere? Hopped on board, looking back from the engine cover.
He's keeping it pretty flat through the Michael Schumacher S. That's a pretty good opportunity on the track to just give a little bit of a breath. Not a whole lot of lift there there coming through the second chicanes, but you can see just how close Ovando is. He's hungry, he is angry, he got that position taken away, he wants it back.
That car overtaking him right now. We haven't talked about it, but Cal Quinn did return to the track, but he's 7 laps down from the leaders, and he is pretty much just trying to get some points here today. Oh, and way wide up and over the curb. That was Boris Ovando in his Porsche, finding himself using maybe a little bit too much track, but he didn't. Wow, that didn't cost him hardly any time, it looks like. He's still right on top of Michael Ross.
He is, and he is coming on strong, too far back to actually make a pass here, but he is going to keep that pressure up on Ross. Gets a little bit of a narrower line there through the Haug hook, runs it a little bit more narrow there through the first section of that Mercedes arena. You can see just how fantastic this is. Multiple lines to be taken all the way throughout. Both drivers all up onto the curbs there through the left-hander and onto the right-hander as they blast down now here towards Valvoline, trying to see if there's anything there, but it looks like Ross has the better escape. Not a lot of lifting, though, from Ross. He may know something we don't, Joe, or he is going to be in very dire straits on this last lap.
All while trying to deal with the 22 breathing down his neck. Down through the Dunlop hairpin. They've got no worries from behind either. It is about 13 and a half seconds to Stephen Ash. He has been left in the dust for sure. Ooh, that's a great run there coming off of the Schumacher S. Does Ovando try something? No, not quite.
Doesn't try something, but he's certainly thinking about it. That's Watson Johnson behind him, though. This could throw a wrench into the works, depending. Oh, I don't like the way this is shaping up. Johnson tries to make a move on Watts through the kink. Is he going to go down now into NGK? He is. Ovando thinks about the same thing. The two LMPs going side by side. That's not going to end well. Watts goes off the track.
And that almost holds up Ross. He has to duck to the inside to keep from losing his speed, trying to go the long way around on the exit of Coca-Cola. Ovando has the overlap, trying to go back to the racing line. They nearly come together. Got to give each other space, boys. This is going to end in tears. Oh, they do come together. Boris Ovando has to take to the grass and lift off. He is going to see the red mist for sure as he locks up the brakes down into the Haug hook. So Michael Ross getting a little bit rough trying to hold on to this second place.
He did indeed, and Boris Ovando now out for blood. You saw that lockup. That is not a good sign from a driver trailing you. That means that he is ready to fight.
And Ross is getting on the radio saying he swears he did not move over. I'm going to have to go and watch that one after the race myself and try to give a thought. So he sounds a little bit heated up, but Boris doesn't seem quite as concerned. So maybe it's the complete reverse of what we thought, and it's Michael Ross is the one that needs to calm down here. Boris, in the meantime, cool as you like, as they come through the Schumacher S. Going to be, what, about 2 or 3 laps to go here?
I think that's about right, Joe. And I did just go back and take a quick look at the replay, and I can confirm Michael did not move. He drove a consistent line down that straight, so I'm not sure how they exactly got together on that one.
Maybe Ovando just didn't realize he was drifting over the slight few inches that he had. I mean, Ross gave him just barely enough room on the entry as we have a blink from Ovando. I saw that earlier in the race that he seemed to be having some connection problems. We ride on board with him now. He tries to square off Coca-Cola. Car squirming under the power. Don't think it's going to be enough.
No, it's not quite enough, but maybe he'll get a little bit of help from that Porsche's high top speed. Not enough to close down the gap, but you can see those cars bow forward. Heavy on the brakes. Takes a different line there through the Haug hook. They come here through the arena, trying to get the power down a little bit early, but he's good and patient. Waits for it, both diving onto the brakes. There's absolutely nothing between these drivers, both at the top of their game. Ovando just fighting. Oh, he's got a good run, but has to counter steer ever so slightly.
He's breathing down the neck of Ross, not willing to give this one up. How hard is he willing to fight, though? As he he going to have to get rough again as they come off of Ford down the hill? Sometimes you can see a sneak attack into the hairpin. He thinks about it. He's going to try and get his nose in, but no. Chopped off at the apex. Looks like Ross is going to deny him there.
It's a bit of a half-hearted move there for Ovando. I don't think he really had the speed, and with as much time as is remaining, he knows that it's not a now or never type of move, so that may have just been something to try to throw Ross off of his game. Ross smart enough to keep himself out ahead of it. They work their way now through that second chicane, lining up onto the backstretch, seeing what these cars' top speeds can do. We have seen Ovando have some good speed coming down into NGK. Doesn't look like he has it here today, though. Ross leads by about 3 car lengths.
And as we've been watching this action, we've missed that Karl Modoff has come into the pits for a second time and retired. I do not know why, but this promotes Eisler to second and Herbino up to third. I did not see any sort of damage or big wreck out of Karl Modoff, so for whatever reason, he has had to call it a day a little bit early. He will still get points, but he'll be way down the order in his class. Meanwhile, through the Mercedes arena, we are going to be 1 to go next time by.
And it looks like Ovando's just a little bit farther back this time than he was on that previous lap, not able to completely catch. Wow, you can see just how hard he's pushing, though, really abusing every inch of the track that he can. Oh, I know, Ovando!
He catches it. Somehow he catches it on the way into Valvoline. It looks like he caught just a little bit of grass, and Boris had to do a mighty save to keep from throwing his race away. But that may have cost him his chance at second. Look at how quick it snapped.
Oy, oy, oy. Judging by that onboard, it looked like he didn't even catch any of the grass, Joe. I think that may have just been a little bit of a lockup trying to brake too hard. I don't know. But absolute heartbreak for Boris Ovando, who really hasn't put a toe wrong.
Oh, why is Christoph Herbino in the pits again? Did he not fill enough? Now, Johnston is, yeah, he's going to come by. Nick is going to be able to get up into third. Oh no, drive-through penalty. Didn't stop. The 92 has run out of incident points and he has received a penalty. Wow.
Oh, you talked about it early in the race that could happen, and it coming to bite our championship leader, Christoph Herbino. But we're going to jump to the race leader, Felipe Ruiz, here as he pilots his way through the final chicanes on the track, lining up for this last long left-right sequence coming to the line.
He's looking for win number 2 here. And this is going to be a little tight. I think he actually is going to get the white flag this time. He's coming up to the chicane with 25 seconds to go. Yes, he's going to get the white flag. Finish line early on the straightaway here. So as he comes around the corner, 1 to go for the 58 with a 15-second gap to Christian Eisler. Many of his main rivals have found themselves fighting amongst each other, suffering from penalties, suffering from mistakes, just all sorts of stuff. Alawi, in the meantime, definitely pushing. 6 seconds between himself and Ross. He'll get the white flag here next time past the line as well.
Both of these leading drivers, both Ruiz and Alawi, really not putting a toe wrong this entire time. But Ovando back up behind Ross. That pace coming back. This is not over, Joe.
What in the world happened? Does Ovando just have that much better pace? Oh, he's got a great run, though. And Michael's short on fuel. He's waving him by. And Boris Ovando is going to get the spot in the end. What a development. Michael really did cut this one too close. Oh my goodness. As the clock comes to 0, Felipe Ruiz is now coming around the backside of the course through the final few corners. This is a man who looks plenty safe on the fuel. And even if he was tight, he could probably coast to the line from here.
He could. That 15-second gap, just absolutely impregnable. He looked like he was not able to be touched this entire race. One more time through the NGK chicane, one more time through Coca-Cola. Your winner of the day, Felipe Luis, coming to the line.
Victory for the 58 here at the Nürburgring, and that is going to make him happy. As in the meantime, the 444 of Uthman Alawi is currently coming down into the Dunlop hairpin. He's going to have almost the entire lap, really, to take his victory lap. In fact, Ovando and Ross, I think the only ones behind him. No, it looks like Stephen Ash on the same lap, but not many others. Looks like Eisler going to take a second place, and Nick Johnston up to third after Herbino got his penalty. Sorry, go ahead there, DJ.
I was just going to say that's a really mega run there from Nicholas Johnston. He had a little bit of a scruffy race last time out in Daytona. Very, very good, aggressive drive from him.
Uthman Alawi coming down to the NGK chicane. Took him a while to finally make good on his pace and get that victory at Daytona. He kicked it off, and now he's going to carry it on with a win here in Germany. The 444 takes victory number 2.
Not nearly as a dominant performance as we saw out of Ruiz, but good nonetheless. And here comes his teammate Boris Ovando to cross the line, a well-earned second.
Ross is going to lose his spot. Ash is going to get third. Just slips by on the final corner as Ross sputters to the line. He cut it too far. Oh, he will be able to at least claim fourth, but Michael Ross goes from second on down. As Dzube also out of fuel as Russo sneaks by him. Wow. So Dzube finishes sixth because of that. Romig just ahead of Mac Miller. A lot of tight battles there at the very end here for our GTE cars. But that's the last of our vehicles to finish. Let's take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. So stick around. Welcome back to the Nürburgring. Round 5 here in the PRL LeMans Series has given the second win to Felipe Ruiz. It was a pretty big gap in the end ahead of Christian Eisler, but most of that was due to, I think, everybody else just kind of fighting amongst themselves rather than focusing on taking down Felipe. Christian still gets himself a nice podium. And how about Nick Johnston behind them in third, climbing from 7th? Owen Watts with the 4th was ahead of Christoph Herbino. with 3 wins on the trot. Unfortunately, he was not able to follow it up. He finishes 5th with a penalty, both on his way in and in the race itself. So it's just been going a little bit south for the 92. Byron Daly took 6th with TNC Layton finishing in 7th, and Raymond Day, the only other car to see the checkered flag of our LMP2s in 8th. Karl Modaf did limp home, but he was many, many laps down.
Uthman Alawi putting in another commanding performance in the GTEs, not nearly as dominant as Ruiz, but a good 7 seconds ahead of Boris Ovando, who was able to pip Michael Ross at the with 1 lap to go. Ross running out of fuel. Stephen Ash able to get Ross at the line to finish out your podium. Ross finishing 4th, followed by Rafael Russo. Tyler DeZube, another victim of fuel. Russo able to get by him right at the line. Sean Romig, Mac Miller behind them. Francisco Montini in 17th, followed by Justin Ream, Nicholas Delp, and Jerome Pidum behind them. Ted Lowendick, you saw him have a very unfortunate start to the race. David Flanagan as well. Kenny Rodriguez and Brett Barrett in 23rd and 24th overall. Modaf having that very mysterious parking. Carl Quinn having incidents, and all of the rest of there did not finish.
So it looks like we are ready to talk to our winner, Felipe Ruiz. Felipe, congratulations on the win. From our perspective, it looked pretty straightforward. Did it feel like that in the car? Felipe, do you have a copy? Looks like we might need to get his mic hooked up here as we wait for him to talk to us here briefly. Felipe, do you have a copy? Looks like he's still a little bit stuck with the mute button on. We'll so 1 second here. We've got Paulo Munoz in here to translate, we hope, as we talk to Felipe through Paulo. Just real quick, we asked Felipe, it seemed like a very straightforward win from our perspective. Did it seem that way from his perspective?
Bueno, Felipe, te preguntan si es que te dicen que desde su perspectiva se vio como un triunfo bastante simple, y si es que se vio así desde tu parte también.
Bueno, ¿qué tal? Buenas noches. Sí, fue una carrera en un principio súper apretada con Modov, apretando súper fuerte en las primeras vueltas y hasta antes de la parada en pit. Pero sí, fue una carrera, o sea, con harta distancia, pero en un principio se sufrió, tuve que empujar demasiado.
Well, good night, everyone. He says that it wasn't as easy as it looked, because Carl was constantly pushing him, and any mistake, any like if Felipe lost focus or anything, Carl was going to catch up, so he was just pushing for the whole first stint, and after the second stint, and especially after Carl got the penalty, it got way easier.
It looked like the temperatures were very cold today. Did you have to take it easy at the start of the race to make sure you got the tires up to temperature nice?
La temperatura estaba súper baja, Felipe. Pregunta si es que al principio fuiste de más a menos para dejar que las ruedas se calentaran y ir con más cuidado.
Sí, las primeras vueltas fui con un poco más de precaución, sobre todo en los frenajes, de que el auto no me pasara de largo. Y sí, ya después de la quinta, sexta vuelta ya empecé a apretar mucho más. Pero sí, había muchísimo grip aparte con la temperatura.
Well, Felipe says that yes, in particular in the braking zones, at the start of the race, he was moving the brake bias forwards for a couple of laps, just to have that little extra caution, try not to spin or anything. But after that, because the track's so cold, once the tires came up to temperature, there was a lot of grip, so it wasn't that bad.
Well, we kind of expected that most drivers would certainly have to be very wary of that. For this round, it seems that he might have the points lead after this, because Urbano has suffered not only being docked points last round, but had a penalty in the race because of too many incidents. Do you think keeping clean can help you maybe beat him in the championship?
Well, parece que después de esta carrera estás primero en los puntos. porque Herbie no tuvo una mala carrera y aparte de eso tuvo una penalización en la carrera anterior. Te preguntan si es que crees que no meterte en problemas y en general hacer buenas carreras te va a llevar a ganar el campeonato.
Sí, bueno, estamos creo que ya a mitad de campeonato y claro, ya con esta carrera tomo la punta del campeonato y nada, desde ahora correr siempre pensando en los puntos, no tan solo en querer ganar, no arriesgar de más. Y sí, desde ahora en adelante las carreras me las tomo siempre pensando en el campeonato, más que el resultado de la carrera misma.
But yeah, he says that according to his calculations, he is now leading the championship. Now, been I think half the championship already. So he's thinking more on the championship than in winning the race of the week. So he would rather come second in every race and just try and win and crash out. He's just racing for the points, trying to get as much points as possible in every race, and hopefully win the championship in the end.
That's still a valid way to win a championship. Congratulations, Felipe, and feel free to thank whoever you'd like.
Felicitaciones, Felipe, y cualquier agradecimiento a quien quiera hacerlo puede hacer ahora.
Bueno, muchas gracias y agradecer al equipo a .cl, a Horacio Calquín y a todos los auspiciadores, Top Speed, todos juegos que hacen posible todo esto.
Okay, thanks. You guys and the .cl team and sponsors and everyone that makes this possible. So thank you guys.
Thank you. That was Felipe Ruiz being translated by Paulo Munoz. And then up next, DJ has caught up with Uthman Alawi, who took another victory today.
Uthman, a little bit of a slow start to the season, but you are in fine form now, my friend. Cold track temperature out there, but didn't seem to phase you at all. You looked red hot. How was it?
Yep, car was handling amazing once again, thanks to RSR powered by G Performance Boys. Setup was handling like a beauty through the stadium section especially, and honestly I could have a lot of confidence with the Porsche over the bumps, which is actually kind of difficult to do with the way the suspension geometry is set up in this car. So overall, really happy with the job I did, and a shout out to Boris bringing home an RSR 1.2. Shouting out some sponsors, Velasquez Engineering, he makes hydraulic pedals for everyone, G Performance, one-stop shop for sim racing gear, and Formula Hypersoft News as well, Butt Kicker. Yeah, just thankful to get these opportunities, and the fact that we're actually closing them out now is a good indication for the future.
Well, it certainly looks that way. Obviously, you know, a couple of points on this track that are very, very notorious in terms of overtaking when you're dealing with some of these faster LMP2s. Any moments that had your hair raising a little bit today?
Honestly, not really. I think I did a really good job of just letting the LMP2s flow through and not holding myself losing time around the outside. A couple of moments through the stadium section, especially where LMP2s were trying to force the move. So I think it was just keeping a level head and letting them through, knowing that half a second here or there isn't going to cost you too much compared to losing a second and a half trying to fight them. So wasn't too bad. Being in the lead certainly helped with mostly clean air to make up the difference. But yeah, not too bad. Great shot, great sign of respect by all the LMP2 drivers.
Very much so. Well, next week, speaking of stadium sections, we head to a elongated stadium section, as I like to think about it, at Imola. Very, very difficult to pass. I have to imagine that qualifying is going to be at a premium. Do you think you're going to be able to carry in the performance, or is this going to be a bit of a swing race for you?
Well, honestly, I think Imola's going to show a lot of people who's the best at qualifying. So as we see, me, Michael, Boris, and Stefan have been probably the class of the field in that. So it'll be interesting if some people can mix it up. But honestly, with the way Imola is set up with the bumps and curves and everything, I think we'll actually see a very similar show to Nürburgring. So shouldn't expect too much difference with the way Imola is laid out, but you never say never.
Well, we'll be watching it for sure. I can tell you that. No, you thanked a lot of your sponsors, but anybody else you need to give a nice shout out to tonight on this win?
Honestly, I think I have to give a shout out to Boris for keeping Michael busy for most of the race. Great job to him getting second place. That really good result for our team.
Well, thank you very much, Uthman, and congratulations once again. And now Joe Peak has caught up with Nick Johnson from the LMP2s.
Nick, congratulations on something of a surprise podium, I imagine, and especially after the way that race started. You got a lot of positions, and then you and Cal Quinn seem to have had a little bit of an unfortunate incident.
Yeah, the killer first lap from starting 7th on the grid. The outside lane, I think, didn't get the memo that we were going, so I picked up a few there, and then through the stadium section, just kind of positioned myself in the right spot. I was able to work my way up to 4th, and I was quite surprised, and I didn't think I had the pace to be there, so I was kind of trying to hold on, and yeah, he made a move in the last corner really late on the brakes. It actually caught me by surprise, but I was like, okay, well, I'll give him the inside, and I held the outside, and I get to the edge of the track, and I can't go anymore, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I guess we're crashing now, so it's kind of one of those things where he forced me to... He put me in a bad spot, and I didn't lift, so it's unfortunate for him and myself. He gave me a bit of damage, but after that, it was just kind of putting my head down and trying to run down Owen. He had a lot of pace. He was really quick early on until I figured out the tires a little bit more and figured out the car, and I started running back down, and luckily he had that one little off in the Dunlop curve, and that brought me right behind him, and it was just making the move with the...
Now, what was going through your mind later on, though, as suddenly you see Modoff disappear, and then next thing you know, Urbano's in pit lane? I mean, that had to have been putting a big smile on your face, finding yourself on the podium like that.
Oh, yeah, it was a complete surprise and awesome for me. Unfortunate for them, I think they both ran into incident limit issues, which I almost did myself. I think I had 11 or 12 at the end of the race out of the 13 that were allowed. It's so easy in the stadium section. We're trying to get every little bit out of these cars in there, and if you just clip an apex a couple millimeters too narrow, you're going to get an incident point, and they stack up really quick when you're trying to push as hard as you can.
But weirdly, you weren't the only one that had two cars come together on the front straight, and unfortunately, yours was the one that caused a wreck in the end. How do you feel that the stewards will see this? Do you think they'll take a look at it?
I mean, I expect the stewards to take a look at any incident that happens. That's what I would hope, at least. So, and if they take a look at it, hopefully they see that I was to the outer limits of the track, and there's not much more I can do other than brake, and I feel like I deserve a little bit of room out there on the edge of the track.
That seems fair enough to me. Well, again, congratulations on a podium, and can't wait to see you at Imola.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Thanks for broadcasting this, doing all the work. Precision Racing League for putting all this on. There's some really good drivers in this series, and it's a lot of fun to put myself against them week in and week out. And thanks for everyone watching. Hello, Danielle, and have a good night.
All right, I love it. As that was Nick Johnston, third place here in the LMP2s. And in the meantime, DJ has caught up with Boris Ovando, who finished second and managed his fuel just a little bit better.
Boris, one of the absolute best battles we saw on track all day was the constant back and forth between you and Michael Ross. Michael obviously falling a little bit foul of fuel, but talk us through the mid pack of that, or the mid stages of that race, where it was just seemed like there was nothing between you two.
Oh man, it was such a close race between Michael and I. Very intense. I was just trying my best to save as much fuel as I could behind him. I could tell he had a little bit less wing than what we were running, so I knew it was going to be very tough to get a run into T1 or into the last chicane there. So I was just biding my time until maybe I could get lucky with some traffic, and it happened. I was able to get the pass through some traffic, held it, pushed a lot, and honestly, I was very surprised that Michael had jumped me in the pits, because I feel just enough for the 35 laps for total for the race, and I thought he may have underfueled. I was doubting myself on my calculations of fuel, and but unfortunately, once he was in front of me, I knew it was gonna be really tough, but I knew I had to just keep pushing him. If he underfueled, then I wasn't gonna let him save any fuel at all, and that's kind of how it played out. And then I thought I lost it with that almost spin, and but he ran out of fuel and I was able to make the pass.
Yeah, what goes through your mind of going through that? I mean, that spin, first off, what happened? We couldn't tell if you got off onto the grass or if that was a lockup or exactly what it was. But then that catch back up of just, okay, I've got to get back into the mindset here. I've got to go. Just talk us through those moments.
Well, in my head, I was just thinking I can't spin out. As soon as I felt the rear go, I told myself, cannot let this car spin out. It wasn't a lockup. I just barely grazed the grass somehow. I was just pushing the limits. I think it was a millimeter. I was able to catch it. I was on 12 incidents, and one more incident would have given me a drive-through. So I got lucky that I was able to catch that and finish the race with no additional incidents and avoid that extra drive-through penalty.
Yeah, it seemed like there were a lot of guys falling afoul of that incident limit here today. And speaking of tight tracks that test the incident limit, we are headed to Imola next time out. How do you feel about the tight, twisty confines there?
I'm still coming to grips with the car. The last two races were pretty disappointing, and I've also been battling a bit of a shoulder issue, which has limited my practice time. And not to make excuses, but it definitely has impacted my performance. It's getting a little bit better, and I hope that I'll be 100% for the next race, if not close to 100%, and I can give Udman a run for his money at least. So, but I'm looking forward to it. It's a similar track, and we just got to work on the setup and put in some laps, and hopefully we're able to come back with a 1-2 at Imola as well.
Well, we'll be watching for it. Boris, congratulations again, and anybody you need to thank on your way out tonight.
Just want to thank the team as always. Without them, we can't make this possible. So thank you to RSR Esports.
Well, thank you so much. That was your second place GTE driver, Boris Ovando. And last but certainly not least tonight, Joe is caught up with Stephen Ash, our third place GTE driver.
And third place, just barely snatching that one at the final corner. How much were you trying to scoot forward in your seat to make sure that you got that one?
Yeah, what a wild finish. Michael came over the radio a lap before and told Boris to go by because he was low on fuel, and I knew I had to push so hard that last lap just to see if I could get anything out of today, and ended up right around the last corner. A little reverse of Sebring, if you remember, when Michael got me on the last corner, which was nice, and yeah, super happy to pick up the podium.
If naturally, this is going to help you in the points battle, but Utman still pulled away from you with another win. Before, it seemed like he couldn't catch a break, and now it's starting to swing the other way. Are you one that pays credence to momentum in racing, and especially in championships?
Yeah, momentum's always huge, and he's definitely coming off 2 wins, so that's going to be big for him, but I knew this week was never going to be the result I was looking for. Coming out of the Daytona 24 hours this weekend, I knew the practice just wasn't going to be there this weekend, and I was just going to try to salvage as good of a position as I possibly could. And yeah, third place is fantastic coming out of that, so really, really happy. But yeah, Uman's got a lot of momentum going into Imola, which is not one of my better tracks, but I'll try to put in a good amount of practice there and see what we can come away with.
Well, we hope for the best there for you. And anybody you'd like to thank before you spray the champagne today?
Yeah, I would just love to thank the team, Full Send Racing, the absolute legend himself, Steen Ledger, and of course my teammate Mac Miller, and you guys in the league for putting on the show. Thanks so much.
That was Stephen Ash, our third place finisher in the GTE class. And that's going to close out our interviews. So, of course, we want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, starting off with Simulation Motorsports Affinity. They can be found at SIMMSA.net if you want to see how to get involved with the world of sim racing. Then there is NinjaTrader. Their website is simply at NinjaTrader.com. And, of course, if you want some cool new toys on your sim rig, check out the Butt Kicker. Their website is simply thebuttkicker.com. thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts that are listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check out our social media, which includes Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us, our merchandise store is simply gsrc.storenvy.com. A link is in the description below, where you can also click the follow button, the subscribe button here on GSRC, so you don't miss a moment here on the channel. The next race is going to be at Imola, as we mentioned. That'll be Tuesday, February 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern. But we also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. However, until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.